So I just have one little, I don't know what you would call it, productivity sort of way of thinking about yourself mindset that I was thinking about this morning. And that is something that my therapist told me a while ago. Now, I don't always look forward to talking with people, let alone someone who's going to tell me what's wrong with me and how I could make myself better. It's a lot of work. But it's nice to get like some advice from people, and just even looking forward to that regular meeting kind of helps me concentrate and train my mind on getting better. And one of the things that this person I talk with knows is I'm a bit of a workaholic, and which is to say that to use an old phrase, I generally live to work instead of working to live. And the most valuable thing in my life is my work product, which is not always, what I get paid for, but just the idea of producing something is often what's valuable. And so, that doesn't really integrate well with the rest of my life or anyone else's life. And so I have to work on getting over that habit. And I think, to put it in worky terms, it's a matter of prioritization, right? And this prioritization idea is probably, if you look at like productivity and airport business book self-help stuff, I think it's like largely the main thing people are trying to get you to do is to prioritize your time, right? Whether you don't want to be distracted, or you're working on the wrong things, or you're overwhelmed by email, or you don't know what's actually going on with your staff, so you need to investigate that more, right? Like you're trying to prioritize what you're actually doing so you can fix the right thing, basically. So I think one thing that he sort of told me about prioritization, I should say they to deneuter it, but whatever, that I think about a lot is this idea that I don't know about you, but I should be more comfortable making a lot more B's and a lot more C's, which is, it sounds like a, what is it? Giving myself like, positive faint praise, a front-handed compliment. But, if you're not familiar with letter grades, right? I think most everyone has this, but you can have an A, B, C. There's an elusive D, but you can have an A, B, C, or F. And an A means basically you did it perfect. A B means 90%, and a C is 70%, and an F is failing. I don't know where the E comes in. Maybe that's just encouraging or something. I'm not sure what D stands for either. I guess you would have ace, big deal. Anyways, but, in trying to prioritize things in my life, I struggle with even knowing what that means, prioritize things, right? Because what prioritize implies is that you're not going to do other things and you're going to do a bad job at it. But for whatever reason, I have it in my head that if someone wants me to do something, I should do it. It's hard for me to say no to people asking to do things. And even more importantly / detrimentally, it's hard for me to say no to myself, right? To something that I want to do or something that I think is important. But the problem becomes that it's stressful and it's not possible to work on all these things, and you do have to prioritize. But I've never really understood what that means, right? Like how that works. And one day, my therapist went over an intriguing way of putting it, which was that and again, I don't mean it to sound like, that stupid job interview thing where it's like, tell me about your flaws. And your answer is, well, I just try too hard to do everything. I'm a bit of a perfectionist. Because I wouldn't say that I'm a perfectionist at all. I'd say it's the opposite. Like, I try to do too much stuff. I have too many half-finished projects and too many things. I get distracted, so I don't finish the right stuff. So I think that whenever someone says they're a bit of a perfectionist, one, they're just sort of making up an answer instead of actually telling you that. But the genuine way of putting it could also be that they never really finish anything because they, as they say, perfect is the enemy of done. I think that's what the phrase is. So the concept that the way of explaining it that he tried to get across to me was that it's okay to get a B on a project. And it's also okay to get a C on a project. And you should just be happy with that, right? Like, you don't have to do perfect on every single thing. And that kind of feeds into the idea that, like, I don't want to abandon things. I want to work on them to some extent. But it also basically lets you prioritize and free up stuff so that you don't spend all your time making everything an A. And I think also it's a comfortable way to give up or admit defeat. and because ultimately this is my problem with words like prioritization. When I hear prioritization, what I hear is not do things, right? And then even worse, this is a behavior that a lot of my coworkers over the years have had, particularly executives and kind of other people who are highly regarded, oddly enough, and kind of well respected and have power. And some people who don't, is you often ask them to do things and they say no, which is always shocking to me, right? Like I figure the higher up in an organization you have, the more important you are, the more you should be saying yes. It's sort of your duty to just do your work. But, in fact, that's just my sort of lizard brain reaction. In fact, that's terrible if you say yes to most everything. And in fact, you do need to have your priorities and goals and use that to limit what you're doing. So, for example, we have a lot of people back in the States and we got a lot of people in Europe. And frequently, someone will ask someone in the States to do something and they'll say no, because we have the Europe people to do that, like myself. And this also comes down to people who like leave meetings early or haven't fully prepared for a meeting. Like some of it's just sloppiness and negligence. But, as I look at people like that more and more, a lot of it, particularly those people that I worked with over the years who are really tuned into prioritization, people who work with backlogs every week. Like what they are really good at is figuring like, I have this set of priorities, these projects I'm working on. You're asking me to work on something else that will take a certain amount of time and that doesn't fit with what my current priorities are. So I'm going to say no. So that ability to say no, again, to me, and I'm not saying this is right, it's just like my immediate guttural lizard brain reaction is like insulting and terrible and something I would never want to do. But in fact, that's a problem on my part. And so conceptualizing that saying no is that there's a gradient of no's, a gradient of deprioritization in the letter grades, right? That like by default, I always want to make an A on everything, but really the way that I can say no is not just sometimes I can just flat out fail at it, right? This is also interesting because it kind of refocuses the blame and judgment on myself instead of projecting it otherwards, which I'm very comfortable judging myself and feeling poorly about me instead of kind of like having other people take that burden on, so to speak. Anyways, but I like this letter grade thing because it allows you to kind of prioritize the amount of no that you're doing, right? So it kind of is for myself and maybe not so much for other people, but it's sort of like levels of commitment that I'm going to do. And I think he told me this several months ago, but it's been a very valuable framework that I don't think about consciously a lot, but for thinking about how much involvement I have in things because of the A's that I've prioritized. So for example, I get involved in a lot of meetings, not as many as some people. I'm really lucky that I can be independent in a lot of the things that I do, but I do get involved in working with other people. And oftentimes in these meetings, right, like it's a meeting for a meeting. We're going to have a meeting with customers or prospects, and people want to know what your slides are and what you're going to want to talk about and sync up and do things ahead of time. And I've noticed over the years that most people in those meetings don't do a tremendous amount of preparation work. They sort of just come with the slides they've always used and sort of just show up. And they do fine nonetheless. Now, there are several people who do put a lot of work into it. And I tend to put a lot of work into these things. Like if you remember my platform as a product thing, right? Like I put for an hour meeting, I don't know, I did a lot of stuff. I sound like I'm congratulating myself again, but I'm just trying to lay things out here. But when it comes to this letter grading system of projects you're willing to get, a C on, like I've used that a lot with meetings to think that like, I know they asked me to send something ahead of time or to think about it, but I'm just going to get a C. I don't care, right? Like I'm just going to get the minimum grade for showing up and doing something, not because it like degrades the performance so much, but because there's almost that diminishing amount of return, right? Like I don't need an A here, right? Like what I deliver as a C is going to be fine. Now, you got to try not to fail too much, but there are things that I fail at, right? Like a lot of it is, and this is something, I forget the name of the book, but I think it's called like Make Time, but it is one of the better productivity self-help books from the airport that you can get. But one of the things that this book notes that I've put into practice quite a bit is sometimes I say I'll do something, some casual little thing, like, like, here's a white paper that I should send you. And someone wants to talk about the white paper more. And I'm like, oh yeah, sure, we should talk about that some more. And then they send me a couple of emails and follow up, and I just totally ignore their emails and just drop it, right? Because I don't know. It's not sort of on my radar of prioritization. And, it's respectful to email them back and things like that. So maybe if they really get on my case, I'll do it. But in those cases, I try to sort of spring load something. The way that I'm comfortable getting an F there is that if they give me another chance to retest, right, then I'll go in and try to do that. But anyhow, that's something I think is valuable for not only yourself, in your work and your home life, of like figure out things. It's not that you're saying no, right? Prioritization is not saying no. Prioritization is just figuring out the letter grade that you're comfortable with for the amount of effort you want to put into this project. And I think in general, if we were to look at like large organization change and getting better at software, a lot of what I talk about and try to emphasize with people over and over again is that when you're starting, you can make little A's, right? Like, you don't need to do everything at once. In fact, it probably will not work. You don't need to change all 2,500 applications and modernize them in 1 year, right? Like, you should probably just pick 5 to 10, right? Now, that is a small amount, but you're going to be learning a brand new way of doing things, brand new technologies, breaking a lot of rules, I should say, rewriting a lot of rules, and experimenting and figuring things out, right? And so, like, you can't expect to get a perfect grade card, an A in everything. And in fact, if you are, then you haven't really set yourself up well, and you have unrealistic expectations. And so, or the people giving it to you are. So there you go. Be comfortable making a C. And also, be sure to make lots of Fs, or you're never really going to be able to make all those A's, let alone stay sane and have a sustainable sort of work environment and life. So always be questioning how you prioritize things. Now, speaking of, do you need help prioritizing things? You know what you should do? You should book some office hours with us. Now, you can email me at codem@vmware.com. I'm not sure who this Codem is. I assume it's maybe it's someone named like Coté Maple Therastophiles. I think that might be a Greek person. But for whatever reason, I get all their email. So you can email me at COTEM. It could also be maybe like Cassidy Odom. I'm not really sure who the Odoms are. It almost sounds like Odin. So I'm going to figure that there's some Norwegian people. But whoever it is, you can email me at COTEM@vmware.com. And I'll try not to do an F on that one and hook you up with stuff. Or you can just click right over here. There'll be a little I to book some office hours with us. Or if you go to tanzutalk.com, you can see the archives for this show and links to book office hours, including 2 other things. If you want to get training for Kubernetes, you can go to kube.academy. We got all sorts of great free courses you can check out. And then also you can go to tanzu.vmware.com/developer. We have all sorts of great developer resources and things like that. Now, as always, I mean, I know I sound like those people who yell about Minecraft that my kids watch, but if you like this, it'd be really nice if you're in YouTube to do a little bit of that little like thing down there. Subscribing to the channel is good, but what's even better is if you post it somewhere and help me share it with people. Because, I like to, I don't mind getting an F on things, but I do like to get an A on eyeballs. That's what I'm after. It sure is nice. And with that, we'll see everyone tomorrow. Bye-bye. Check this out. This is totally useless and it's all crooked, but look, I can be like, whoa, I got another camera. I thought maybe every now and then, it might be fun if I'm referencing something over here and you can see the rest of the studio. But let's go back and get the show started.